Dunkley.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. This legislation seeks to insert a new chapter in Australia's Constitution, and it is part of starting a new chapter in Australia's history. The new chapter in the Constitution includes solely proposed section 129, which recognises First Nations people, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as the First Nations people of this country, which establishes a voice and the right to make representations, and gives the parliament ultimate power over the way that voice will be structured, will operate, and the way its representations will be made, and what will be done with them. As Noel Pearson said to the committee during the inquiry with respect to section 129, these are beautiful words. The proposed provision will adorn the Constitution. I've listened to many submissions, I've read all of them, and I've listened to people present, and I haven't found a really compelling reason to change the words that the government has introduced into the House. I think children of the future will look back on these words and be really proud of the Constitution. I think this is a good provision. It has a real sense of history. It honours Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It is a safe provision. It is a provision that meets the needs of Australia and the needs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And no matter what those on the other side of the chamber may say, those words, those positive words from Mr Pearson, accurately summarise the absolutely overwhelming majority of submissions to the committee inquiry and evidence the committee received. There's been talk, and it's in the dissenting report, about somehow this process being rushed and this legislation being rushed. It is difficult to identify a pre-referendum process since Federation that can hold a candle to the processes that have led us to this point on the proposal. No referendum has been preceded by more debate, more engagement by parliamentarians, legal experts and community members than this one. There was an expert panel on the recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the Constitution established in 2010, which conducted community consultation and produced a report in 2012. There was the 2015 report of the Joint Select Parliamentary Committee on Constitutional Recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. There was the First Nations Constitutional Dialogues conducted by the Referendum Council in 2016 and 2017 to discuss options for constitutional reform led by Aboriginal peoples. There was the First Nations Constitutional Convention at Uluru, held by the Referendum Council in 2017 to ratify the decision-making of the constitutional dialogues. There was the final report of the Referendum Council in June 2017, which endorsed the Uluru Statement from the Heart and called for voice, treaty and truth. There was the 2018 report of the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional Recognition relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. There was the co-design interim report in 2020 and final report in 2021. And then the Labor Party, this government, went to the 2022 federal election with a clear commitment to hold a referendum in this term of parliament. The Australian people elected a government committed to holding a referendum. The draft constitutional amendment was announced by the Prime Minister in July 2022. That draft text was subject to robust scrutiny and testing from the Referendum Working Group, the Constitutional Expert Group and other legal experts. As a result of that process, the government made changes to the draft text, including to put beyond doubt the broad scope of the parliament's power to make laws relating to the voice. And then we had the joint committee process. We completed our inquiry on the 12th of May 2023. There were hundreds of submissions and thousands of comments and scores of people who gave evidence. And the Joint Select Committee made a single recommendation that the bill be passed without amendment. The evidence that we heard during that committee process, from Canberra to Orange to Cairns to Perth, back to Canberra, was powerful and it was moving. It was from people who were engaged in the Uluru Dialogue and the process that led to the Statement from the Heart. It was evidence about the importance of constitutional recognition, about the importance of being able to have a consultative role in the development of policies that impact directly on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It was evidence about Australia's history and why we are where we are now and why this is so important. Auntie Pat Anderson told the committee what they asked for was a voice to Canberra, not a Canberra voice. What we have heard in the dialogues was that, and this is why reserve seats and designated parliamentary seats weren't prominent. People don't want to be politicians. In the dialogues they said they don't want to be politicians, they don't belong to political parties, they don't want to be going to Canberra to be politicians, they want to serve their community. They want to live in their communities and serve their mobs and their families. They're extraordinary men and women. They've lived their whole lives in their communities, helping their own mobs. They have no intention of leaving their communities. That's at the heart of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and the voice to Parliament. It's about getting grassroots voices amplified and feeding into Canberra, representing the views and voices of communities. It is about people and this country. It is about Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. It is also an amendment to our Constitution, which means that we did hear from a range of constitutional experts. And it is sophistry to say that when you have an overwhelming majority of legal experts of one opinion, that the outlying opinion of just a few people somehow can balance that. It can't and it doesn't. The idea of legal risk was addressed fairly during this committee inquiry. Brett Walker, SC, who appears in the High Court more than any barrister in Australia, told the committee that the idea of the voice somehow jamming the courts from here to kingdom come as a result of this enactment is really too silly for words. The dissenting report from the Liberal members of this committee tried to rely on evidence of former High Court judges and Chief Justice to say even they acknowledge there is some risk. Takes it out of the context of what those witnesses' evidence was, which is this is a sound proposal that will benefit our community and will not lead to the sort of fantastical outcomes that those on the other side have proposed. The Solicitor General said the proposal to enshrine a voice in the Constitution is not only compatible with Australia's system of representative and responsible government, it would enhance that system. Why are people so concerned about enhancing our system? Can pay tribute to the, let's face it, white men who drafted Australia's Constitution in the dissenting report, talking about what? Order. I'm sorry, I'm being heckled from the other side. I wonder if they're contesting that the founding fathers were white men.
Order.
Really?
Order, please. The member for Dunkley will continue.
You're contesting they were white men? Yes,
Order.
Because you know what happened when the Constitution was drafted and what there's no mention of in the dissenting report when it says that citizenship rights were left out of the Constitution? There's no mention of the fact that First Nations people were left out of the Constitution. And that's what we're here to address. When the Constitution was drafted, it had no respect for people who had lived here for more than 60,000 years before colonisation. And this simple and elegant change, Member for Deakin, you should just sit there and be quiet and let me finish my speech because you're embarrassing yourself.
The member for Deakin will desist.
The dissenting report also
failed
failed to make any reference to proposed section 129, subsection 3. And that is a telling absence, because that is the subsection of proposed section 129 that gives ultimate power to legislate for the voice to the parliament. So all of the constitutional concerns, so-called concerns that were raised in the dissenting report, fail to address that simple fact. Deputy Speaker, this is an important moment in history. This is an opportunity to bring our country together and walk forward in reconciliation. After hearing all of the evidence in the inquiry that I was a part of, there is only one reasonable conclusion open to the committee, and that is that the draft provision is constitutionally sound and should be supported in its present form. Because listening to communities, instead of saying, we know better, listening to communities leads to better laws and policies and better outcomes, making a practical difference on the ground in areas like health, education and housing, and having a moment where all of us, Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, can be proud of ourselves as a country. That's what the voice will help to deliver. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member for Dunkley. I'd like to remind the House that